Okay, so before we get going on this bread dough, I wouldn't be staying true to myself if I didn't do this. Let's have a glass of wine. Okay, so just happen to have over here a bottle of wine. It's like I planned it or something. I did plan it, in fact, and here's the reason. I used salt for this. Huh? Wait, salt, wine, salt, what? Salt, wine? So, the reason that I used salt is I put salt in the water, which is cold, okay? So, if you make ice water, it gets cold. But if you make ice water and put salt in it, it gets colder. What? I don't know. Not a chemist. All I know is it works. All right, here we go. I have got together my ingredients for 2 batches of bread. And first, actually, I should do the one without salt. So let's do that, okay? Bread flour. Yes, bread flour. Okay. This video is not me like teaching you how to make bread. I'm gonna make some bread, and one of them's gonna have salt and one of them's not, so you can see how stretchy it is. This is about seeing what salt does to bread. I'll share more about baking bread in another video sometime. I am gonna tell you about why I'm doing certain things though, like I'm gonna put the yeast in the water. This is instant yeast, aka rapid rise yeast, aka bread machine yeast. And without going into yeast, because this is a video about salt, I'm gonna add the yeast to the water so that it distributes evenly. Some yeast you have to like add to water and then like wait for it to bloom or rehydrate. We're not doing that. This is instant yeast. You can mix it in the flour if you want to, but it'll mix together better if I put it in the water. So that's what I'm gonna do. I'm just gonna kind of poke at it with my finger, kind of mix it up, splash it everywhere. I'm good at that. This is not a video on how not to be messy, by the way. So if that's what you thought you were getting, stop playing it right now and go turn on a video about cleanliness or something. Okay, let me get my trusty thingy, spoon. You do not need a KitchenAid to make bread. You do not need a stand mixer to make bread. I have a stand mixer and I use it to make bread, but you don't need it, okay? So if you don't have one, don't worry about it. Like, just, you know, use a bowl and a wooden spoon. Okay, so this is called the straight dough method, which means you just mix everything together. So that's what I'm gonna do, okay? I'm just gonna mix it together. You can see that this dough is kind of just kind of loosely coming together. I'm gonna get in there with my hands now. Kind of squish it all together because the water has incorporated into the flour fairly well. Okay, I'm just gonna kind of work it until it all incorporates together. And if not all the flour works its way into the dough, then that's fine. It wasn't meant to be, okay? It doesn't have to be perfect here. We're just making some bread, okay? All right, so there we go. Dough, as Homer Simpson so eloquently put it. Look at it. It's dough. It's like Play-Doh, but it's not play. This is for real dough. For real dough. I meant to do that. I'm gonna get this cutting board out. I'm not really into tips, but if you put a wet towel, you can use a paper towel too if you want. I just like a kitchen towel. Put it under your cutting board. This cutting board is a little bit wonky. You know, it's warped a little bit, so it kind of teeters on me and it moves. You put that wet towel under there and it holds it still so you can knead your dough. Okay, if you need to knead, then I'm just going to start kneading the dough. Okay, now, normally, what would happen here is I just knead and knead and knead until it got to what they call the window pane stage, which is when you can stretch the dough out and it doesn't tear and you can see through it. It's nice and thin, but as you can see, if I try and stretch the dough out, it just rips, okay? Now, you can probably see here, at this point, I should still be able to knead this dough, okay? Because if I try and stretch it out to the window pane, it's still tearing, okay? Like, I can't stretch it. It's tearing. But I also can't knead it. Look at this. It's like I mean, I'm not the strongest guy in the world, but come on here. Like, it's really tough, okay? It's like tough, okay? I mean, I can barely stretch that enough to knead it, and the more I knead it, the like tougher it gets, okay? I'm just gonna set this aside because I cannot knead it enough. What I am gonna do is add salt to this. You won't see me measure salt a whole lot in my videos, but for baking, you follow the formula. You don't mess with the flour and the salt and the yeast, all that stuff. It's science, okay? So I'm just gonna kind of work this a little bit more as much as I can because I put that salt in there and I'm just kind of let it do its thing. The salt will begin to relax this gluten and make it more elastic. I feel like it's already working. We're going to set this aside, and when we come back to it, theoretically, this is an experiment for me too. I haven't done this before. This will be more pliable. Okay. Just going to kind of scrape this out. My trusty compost bin right here. Makes me feel a little bit better about my life. You know, kind of like recycling, but for food. Anyway. Batch number 2 of bread. Each of these is scaled out to be about a loaf, by the way, of bread. Okay, so we're going to use salt this time. Do you remember what I said about the yeast? Don't mix the salt and the yeast together directly. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add the salt to the flour. Just going to sprinkle it over the flour there. There's different schools of thought of how you can incorporate salt to bread dough and stuff. But I'm just going to give that kind of a little stir. Now the salt's in there, and it's not going to be like salt, yeast, bad, you know. It'll slowly incorporate itself in the way that it should. Now I'm going to do the same thing where I take the yeast and I add it to the water and just kind of give that a stir. Okay, I know I used my finger last time, but I'm using the wooden spoon handle this time because I feel like it and because no one can tell me how to live my life. Let's mix that up a little bit. And then let's do the same thing. All the ingredients together. Mix it up. Adrian went on a hike today. She's like, I'm getting out of here. She brought the baby over to my mom's house and she went for a hike. I'm so glad she's getting some time to take care of herself. She's been doing a lot. She's back at her day job and, you know, nursing the baby constantly. You know, she's got it pretty rough. She deserves to take some time for herself. Okay. All right, so same amount of everything except we've added salt, right? So I'm just kind of incorporating these ingredients. Already, like, the dough is really coming together much more nicely. It's less kind of stringy, strandy, scrappy. Scrappy, that's a good word, right? Scrappy. It's an official technical descriptor for texture of bread dough. Make a scrappy dough. Already this dough's feeling better. It's just more pliable. Okay. All right, I feel pretty good about that. Now I'm just going to start kneading again. Oh, yeah. Oh, this is mucho better. Okay. I'll go more into kneading technique and stuff later. All right, I've only been kneading this for what, like a minute, maybe 2, okay? And I want to show you something right now. Already, I can kind of stretch this dough out. Look at this. See that? It's not window pane yet, which would mean I could like stretch it out until I could see through it, but it's like pretty rocking. So I can stretch it like super thin already, and watch this. I mean, I'm doing that with ease. I'm just pulling it gently. It's not hard to pull. I'm just trying not to rip it and show you how it can stretch easily and stay stretched. Remember our other bread dough? I wonder if it's relaxed. So because gluten is like a springy thing, it's elastic. If you let it like chill out and relax, it will relax. It will get more elastic again. The tight, springy gluten strands will relax. Look at that. Well, we added salt to it for one, but remember how I could barely pull it apart? It's still pretty tight, but I mean, look at that. Salt, okay? Very important. Changes the chemical structure of gluten. Also, it's gonna taste delicious. If you made bread without salt, it'd just be like super bland. Ugh, it'd be bland, okay? All right, so look at that. That's amazing. It's still pretty tight, and if I work it a little bit again, it's still kind of a like real tight ball. Yeah, see, now it's like, I mean, I'm not faking this. I'm like pulling hard. Nothing, right? Okay. My salted dough. I mean, look at that. Here, 2 fingers. It's super stretchy, super relaxed and elastic. Okay. So it's a big reason why you got to use salt in your dough. You want to make a pizza? You want to do that thing where you like toss your pizza dough? I suck at that, but I just haven't practiced enough. So you got to have salt in your dough, because otherwise you're going to be tossing your pizza and it's just going to be like, ooh, I almost dropped that. It's hard rubber junk. Okay, so I got to let that relax a little bit more. This one here still needs to be kneaded a little bit, okay? And the more I knead it, the more it needs me. No, the more I knead it, the tighter it gets, but because it's salty, it relaxes pretty quickly, so we can rest it a little bit and give it a second and it'll relax, and then we can continue kneading it. In the meantime, let's relax with a glass of delicious Riesling. Pool floaty. Now let's check the window pane status here. I'm gonna start spreading this dough out, okay? Once I get to the window pane stage, I don't want to work it anymore, because I'll end up with tough dough, okay? And you don't want tough bread. Still kind of tearing, okay? I'm going to knead it a little bit more. Don't worry, I'm going to cut all this out. You're not going to have to watch me knead bread dough for like 20 minutes or whatever. Meanwhile, Mike is kneading his baguette dough. He seems a bit stressed for time. I just don't want anything to go wrong with me bread. Bake this bread every week at home. Nothing ever goes wrong. Some reason, everything's going wrong today. Sorry, I know there's probably like an international audience going on here. Sorry, British people. I know I'm like making a mockery of your vernacular here. I'm just fascinated by it. It sounds so awesome. It's like at least 50% of why I watch the Great British Baking Show. All right, let's have a look here. We got a window pane yet? I reckon that's a yes. See how you can see the light through there? That is the window pane stage, folks. That means we're ready to prove. It's kind of a neat trick, huh? Then, got my little quarter sheet pan. Put that on there. Plastic wrap. Keep it from drying out, all right? And I'm just gonna put this in the proof box. We use this countertop oven as our little proof box, and we'll get it rocking. Try and double the size in like 30 minutes to an hour. All right, welcome back. As you can see, we have a loaf of bread. I wanted to save you the agony of watching the bread rise and all that stuff. I'll do an actual bread video sometime soon, but for right now, as you can see, the bread came out great. I ended up scrapping the unsalted dough that we salted after the fact. It just didn't relax in time. By the time it was relaxed enough to knead, this dough was ready to form and proof, so it just would have taken all night. And in fact, I stopped last night. I didn't bake this bread last night. I formed the loaf, and instead of proofing it in the proof box, I put it in the fridge overnight, and it slowed the fermentation enough that the loaf was just about there as far as rising when I took it out of the fridge this morning. Put it in the proof box for a few minutes while the oven preheated, and I baked it off this morning. I'll give you a close-up of this here. As you can see, the scoring on it wasn't quite deep enough. Normally, if I score it a little bit deeper, and these slash marks really open up and allow steam to escape from the loaf. So it appears to have turned out pretty well. It browned nicely. You can see underneath the pale color of the loaf had it not browned. So nice browning, kind of a bubbly crust. Has a nice sound to it. It should be, you know, firm yet hollow sounding. Anyway, let's cut the bread and see what it looks like inside. Okay, I'll be damned if it doesn't look like bread. Smells amazing. You can see the crumb, which is this part in the middle. It's got pockets in it. I feel like, you know, if this was a true French baguette, it would have like some real big hollow pockets. So probably could have expanded a little more in the oven, but you see how it springs back when I press it with my thumb like that? That means it's fully baked. That's a pretty nice loaf of bread right there. I'm excited to share this with Adrian. All right, so there you have it. That's what happens when you do and don't add salt to bread dough. Rest assured, that bread would have turned out just fine if the timing would have been a little bit better. I am proud, though, that I was able to use kind of a mitigation technique on this bread where before I really learned to cook, I might have got to the point where it was way too late to be baking bread, and I would have either been like, oh, the hell with it, and tossed it away, or I would have stayed up all night baking bread and been like, you know. So I'm proud of that, and I'll share that with you soon. Some, you know, ways to salvage recipes that you feel like are just going south. That's for a future video. For now, don't forget to leave a comment below. Tell me if you have any experience with using salt in baking. Did you like mix it up with the sugar, or did you forget to add it? Let me know in the comments below. I'd love to hear your experiences with salt and baking, and if you've noticed that it has an effect on the flavor or the chemical properties of gluten. In the meantime, download my free kosher salt guide, www.recklesspalate.com/salt. It's free. It'll help you figure out how much salt to add to things when you're improvising in the kitchen. It's going to give you some confidence to cook reckless. All right, see you next time.